It's so easy to be average. It takes a little something to be special, doesn't it? It takes a little something special to be a great player. Did you push yourself to be great today?
There wasn't a first down. Not that much. The officiating, I'm bitterly disappointed with the officiating today. That spot, the graphic displays the NFL penalties. The one not called on us, on that Perry, clearly was being pushed to short down there. And the previous penalty they called on Delano Hill, the ball is uncatchable and by the receiver. See, I'm bitterly disappointed. Throw a hat, throw a stick, throw a sideline, that's a penalty.
This is the Silver Bullets Podcast on the Ozone Radio Network, your authority on all things Ohio State. Here are your hosts, Shannon Sommers and Chip Minnich.
Not Chip, if you have an iota of human feeling.
All right there, Buckeye Nation. Welcome to the Silver Bullets Podcast on the Ozone Radio Network. I'm your host, Shannon Sommers, contributor at Hayes & Cannon on theozone.net and producer of Acosta Field with Tony Gerdeman. Today I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Chip Minnich, who is also a contributor at Hayes & Cannon on theozone.net and Athlon Sports. Chip, how are we doing today?
Doing well, Shannon. It's great to be with you talking Ohio State football.
Definitely. Today we're going to be discussing the game against the Spartans that happened last Saturday. We're going to be previewing with Robert from the Illini board. He's also, I think, I got to relook again here, One Eye Lion on Twitter. He's going to discuss with us about the Fighting Illini and Lovie Smith. We're also going to have our Pick'em segment, which apparently I'm now 6 games above, so maybe I could just take this week off and Chip can catch up. But no, in seriousness, also we're going to be announcing a contest at the end of the show, so you want to stay tuned for that.
At the Spartan 47-yard line, Mike Weber in at tailback. Barrett gives it off. Weber straight ahead. He hits the Michigan State 30. Weber to the 20, to the 5, to the end zone. Mike Weber, touchdown on a 47-yard run. Mike Weber ends up with his 6th touchdown of the season, and Ohio State strikes first, taking a 6-0 lead. First and goal, Ohio State to the Michigan State 4. Snap to J.T. Barrett. Barrett fakes the handoff, runs it himself right into the end zone. J.T. Barrett on a 4-yard touchdown run. His 6th scoring run of the season, and Ohio State has taken a 13-0 lead. Third and goal, Ohio State to the Michigan State 4. Barrett's going to take off running himself, and Barrett dives toward the end zone and lands there for the score. His 2nd touchdown of the day on a 4-yard run. J.T. Barrett, and Ohio State ahead 20-0 over Michigan State. Ohio State at the 8 of Michigan State. Dobbins in the backfield. Now he'll break wide to the left. Barrett's going to screen it to Dobbins on the left side. Catches at the 11. Moves to the 5. Fires into the end zone for the touchdown. 8-yard screen pass play for a score. J.T. Barrett to J.K. Dobbins, and it is 27-0 Ohio State. Barrett gets the snap. Draw a handoff, Mike Weber, running left angle, 25-30. Weber, 35-40. Weber hits the 50, gets to the Michigan State 40. On the move to the Michigan State 20, to the 10, to the 5, and into the end zone goes Mike Weber. 34-0 Ohio State. First and 10, Ohio State at Michigan State's 48-yard line early in the third quarter. Snap to Barrett, sets it at 45 to throw, pulls the trigger, going down the right side. Benjamin Victor caught at the 10, drags his defender with him, and he goes into the end zone. Benjamin Victor on a 48-yard touchdown pass play. And it is 41-3, Ohio State ahead of Michigan State.
The Buckeye highlights are courtesy of Paul Keels on the Ohio State IMG Radio Network. All right, Chip. Ohio State went to Iowa City, got spanked. We figured when they came home, they were going to have a little bit of anger inside of them after playing, getting beat down in Iowa City by the Hawkeyes. Spartans come to town. We had Hondo on the show, which unfortunately you weren't able to be a part of, but as always, another awesome show with Hondo. But I was worried about it being close. The home team hasn't won since 2007 or something like that. But Ohio State found a running game, and they ran all over Sparty, one of the best run defenses in the country. I'll let you go ahead and discuss them more.
Well, you're right, Shannon. I think we were both hedging Ohio State wins, but neither one of us had Ohio State winning. I mean, not in our wildest dreams did we think Ohio State was going to blow Michigan State out. And for what it's worth, I'm happy to see Ohio State beat Michigan State so convincingly. Of all the players, just to kind of give credit where credit is due, I'm especially happy for Mike Weber, because it would be fair to say that the 2017 season has been disappointing for him coming back from injury. But for Mike Weber to have such a phenomenal game right from the onset, like you said, Ohio State, they went back to what has been, I guess you could say traditionally their bread and butter under Urban Meyer. Whenever they can dominate the line of scrimmage, running the ball effectively, that usually leads to an Ohio State win. As I said, though, nobody in their wildest dream anticipated Ohio State being so dominant against Michigan State. And it's hard to believe that Michigan State, the team that for the last several years under Mark D'Antonio, that has been, a point here, a point there, that they were never in that game literally after the first quarter. I mean, it was done, for lack of a better word. I mean, Ohio State, yeah, I know that what the final score of 48-3, but it was never even a contest. So the only thing that I said in the aftermath is, besides congratulations to Ohio State, is I would not be surprised if next year that game, incidentally, for those of you who kind of go from season to season like myself, looking at where games fall on the schedule, that game next year in East Lansing is November 10th, 2018. And my prediction is that's going to be a night game up in East Lansing, because I cannot imagine Mark D'Antonio wanting to take on Ohio State during the day after, the complete annihilation that he and the Spartans suffered at the hands of the Ohio State Buckeyes last week.
Well, I don't know. D'Antonio does not like night games from what I understand. So that'll be pretty interesting, and we shall see about that. Oh, this just in, Mike Weber is still running, and he just scored another touchdown. No, seriously, he averaged 18 yards per carry. I think he only had like 6 or 7 carries or something like that. He just went off on Sparty defense, looked great. J.K. Dobbins was looking great. He got over 1,000 yards. I think the 4th freshman in Buckeye history in order to have 1,000 yards rushing. So, I mean, that's pretty illustrious, company right there in itself. Offensively, they move the ball as far as, the rushing attack and everything. JT, I think he had 1 interception. So now he has, I believe, 6 on the year, which is still less than Michigan. Not sure. But, yeah, so defensively, they looked really good. I know before the game, I sent a message to Tony, because all of a sudden I got an alert on my phone that Dante Booker and Baker were both out. And I'm like, what's going on? And he's like, Ohio State will send out a reason why or something like that in a little while. I never did see it, but Worley moved over to his natural position. He's played the last, year, whatever, outside. Tough Borland had a great game. He's very stout against the run. So, I mean, the front 7 really showed up. They showed up big time. They caused a lot of problems for Lewerke, whatever you want to pronounce it. I really loved how in I think it was the fourth quarter, and Michigan State's driving down the field and they're trying to get a touchdown because all they had is the 3 points. And Chase Young is in there, and it was fourth down and I forget how many. And Chase Young just made a shoestring tackle and tripped up Lewert and prevented him from getting a first down and be able to get in the end zone. So I thought that was really, really a great job on Ohio State to keep Sparty out of the end zone. So their defense showed up and they looked pretty good.
Yeah, the only correction I was going to make is that I know exactly the play you're referring to with Chase Young. By that time, Michigan State had pulled Brian Lewerke, and they had a true freshman, Messiah DeWeaver.
Was it?
And yeah, but the point taken, I have to confess, I was very, very nervous. I predicted a win.
Yeah,
for those of you that
we unfortunately didn't put that part of the show out, but yeah.
But that was completely fine. I thought Hondo, as usual, Hondo Carpenter he's phenomenal as his insights. But I had predicted 27-24. I know that I was not the only Ozone staff member to predict a close game, and let's face it. I mean, we were kind of, the fact that I think it would be fair to say that we were kind of puzzled as to why that line in Las Vegas was as broad as it was, considering all the previous Ohio State, Michigan State games that had taken place over the last several years. And we were thinking, why is the line so large? And like you, the morning of the kickoff, to be notified, oh, by the way, Jerome Baker and Dante Booker are going to be out of the game. It did not add a feeling of comfort and calmness to
no,
me.
Not at all.
It made me feel very, very, very uneasy. But I think it will be interesting to see what the Ohio State coaching staff does with the linebackers going forward, because I agree with you. Chris Worley playing on the outside, Tuff Borland in the middle. Give credit to Malik Harrison as well, making his first start. But, the speculation is that possibly that maybe they're going to keep Chris Worley on the outside, Tuff Borland in the middle, and Jerome Baker, if his health allows it, to back on the outside, and play the linebackers as much as you can with possibly Dante Booker as well as Malik Harrison going forward, because in the coming weeks they're going to be playing against a Michigan team, if everything falls the way that we hope it will, against a Wisconsin team in the Big Ten Championship. You need to have a stout middle linebacker like Tuff Borland, who had, I believe, 11 tackles against Michigan State. You need to have your linebackers playing at their very best against power running teams, which both Michigan and Wisconsin are. So the reason I'm kind of struggling for words is because I never anticipated such a dominating win. So congratulations, Ohio State, for righting the ship and getting back into contention to win the Big Ten East and getting into the Big Ten Championship.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't mention that other part, because Coach Meyer said that there's not going to be any talk of the P word anywhere around Columbus. So we're just going to avoid that whole conversation for 2 weeks.
Well, it should be.
I definitely agree.
Even after, I think I'm going to give Urban Meyer all the credit in the world if that can come to pass. You'll notice that that's the only P word that I just used there is pass. But in all seriousness, I realize Election Day has come and gone, but it wouldn't be the first time, won't be the last time that Coach Meyer has done some campaigning for trying to get his teams, regardless of whether it was when he was down in Gainesville or in Columbus, to get them into a better bowl situation. How is that? So depending on how everything takes place, I agree with Coach Meyer. That's when the appropriate time to have that discussion, but it certainly should not be now. It should be right now on sending the seniors out on a winning note in their last home game of their careers on Saturday against the Illinois Fighting Illini.
I agree. And I tweeted out after the game, congratulations to the 2017 Big Ten East Division champions. Now, technically, they are not the champions yet. A win Saturday against Illinois will solidify them the Big Ten East. It won't solidify them the appearance in the Big Ten championship game unless either Michigan takes a loss or we beat Michigan in the final game, or even if we lose to Michigan, there's a 3 or 4 way tie to where we'll be able to, we have all the tiebreakers. So I know a lot of people were confused and whatnot and all that, and I thought about it afterwards, and I totally forgot that, yes, officially this Saturday, if Ohio State beats Illinois, they are the Big Ten East champions, which will make that the 6th time in a row. All right, we have Robert here from IlliniBoard.com. Also follow him on Twitter at LionEye. He's here to join us to discuss everything about the Illinois Fighting Illini. Robert, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
I know a couple of years ago we had you on our show. It was Men in the Scarlet and Gray podcast back then. But during that time, I think it was after Tim Beck was let go, then I think the athletic director was let go, and you guys were searching for a new chancellor. So it was like all from head to toe, just a reorganization. I forget who the interim coach was that they ended up giving a contract to, and then with the new AD comes in. What's that?
It was Bill Cubitt who was the interim who was extended. Yeah,
right. And then the new athletic director comes in, and was it in January or February or whatever, unexpectedly lets him go and brings in Lovie Smith. Lovie Smith doesn't have his recruiting class for the first year, so last year, for his second season, he has his first full recruiting class. What is the attitude of Illinois fans with everything that's going on and not seeing much in the way of progress from Lovie Smith yet?
Well, I think it's twofold. One is, 3 wins last year, 2 this year, and, Illinois closes the season with 2 ranked teams and probably not going to win. So on one hand, Lovie's going to start 3-9, 2-10, which is a pretty pitiful start. On the other hand, starting this year, like you mentioned, Lovie didn't have a first recruiting class. He took over mid-season or mid-spring. Actually, he took over in March, and they had to put off spring ball and do it in an abbreviated thing in April once they named a coaching staff. So the first year was this kind of weird thing. The recruiting class he had was recruited by the interim coach. There wasn't much talent there. It was the worst class in the Big Ten. It was, one of the worst classes in Illinois history, so there wasn't much to work with. The first year, I think most Illinois fans just kind of tossed it out, and that was that. Now Lovie has come in with his very first recruiting class in his second year, and he has turned to almost all of them immediately. He's played 21 of his 24 true freshmen. he started as many as 11 of them in one game. There was one game where the 11 true freshmen started. So he's basically completely started over, is the only way to say it. It's the youngest team in Illinois history. It's the youngest team in college football this year. I did some studying. I think it's the youngest team in college football this decade. He's just basically said, we're starting over right now. I'm playing the kids, and we will hopefully get there in 2 to 3 years.
Is the fan base and the university going to have patience with him? And do you feel that he's going to be able to get better at recruiting in order to be able to get better recruits, especially having the name and having a Super Bowl ring and, coming from, having the NFL pedigree and everything?
I guess I don't know of any really patient fan base.
That's true.
3-9 and 2-10. It's really hard for any fan base to just be, we'll be fine. We'll wait this out. The administration, I think, is very patient with him. I think this was Josh Whitman is the new athletic director. He's a former Illinois football player. He graduated in 2000, so he's a younger guy. He was part of a rebuild like that. So when Ron Turner took over the program in 1997, Whitman was one of his first recruits. They went 0-11 in 97, and then they went 3-8 the next year, and then they built up to a bowl in 1999. And then the eventual build in the fifth year was Illinois was in a BCS bowl in 2001, won the Big Ten solo. First time Illinois had won the Big Ten outright in a long time. So because Whitman was part of that, an 0-11 season the first year and playing the freshmen and rebuilding, I think he sees that as the way to rebuild football. So he's given Lovie a 6-year contract, and he's totally behind Lovie, not playing the seniors and juniors and running with the freshmen. And this is a long form rebuild that hopefully shows some produce in year 3, 4, and 5.
Chip, I'll let you go ahead with your questions.
Well, earlier this week, Urban Meyer at his press conference with the beat media, when asked about Illinois, he gave praise to Illinois' defensive line. Can you give our listeners an idea as to the talent on the Fighting Illini defensive line coming into Ohio Stadium?
It's very young. Every position on the team is very young. The strength is probably the defensive tackles. There are 3 sophomore defensive tackles who have been pretty good so far, plus 1 junior and 1 freshman. So that's probably the strength of the defense. The defensive ends are very young. It's 1 senior who's a converted linebacker. He was a linebacker last year. He's playing weak side defensive end, just kind of a rush guy this year. And then 4 freshmen, 4 true freshmen are the rotation. So, yes, it's been getting better, and it's been somewhat impressive in some games. And Illinois was kind of right there in the Minnesota game, and even had a chance against Wisconsin, kept it close at home. And, they've been showing some progress. It's not a great defense, but it's a decent defense. The issue with Illinois is the offense. So they're decent, but they're just so young. They're when you go, if you're rotating 8 guys on the defensive line, it's basically 1 senior, 1 junior, 3 sophomores, and 4 freshmen, I think. So it's just such youth that experienced team like Ohio State can just pick them apart.
So a phrase that you keep using, and I understand why you do, about they're so young. So I'm going to bring up a name that personally makes me feel so old, and that is Jeff George Jr. The fact that it is junior. I remember Jeff George playing many years ago for Illinois. So can you give our listeners the kind of season that Jeff George Jr. is having for the Fighting Illini at quarterback?
So Illinois started the first 4 games with a junior quarterback, Chase Crouch. He's more of a dual threat guy, more running guy. But the passing game just wasn't there. So after 4 games, they made the switch and went to Jeff George Jr. Jeff George Jr. had started 4 games last year. He was a third stringer, but first string and second string both got injured, so he had to start 4 games in 2016. Young guy, sophomore. Only one offer coming out of high school, Illinois, his dad's alma mater. He was a gray shirt recruit, so this is actually his, I guess he's a sophomore, but it's his 4th year. He came in, sat out the first year, joined the team spring of the second year, that kind of thing. And the issue has just been turnovers. Even last year and this year, he's just, he's made some good passes. He's made some good connections with receivers. He'll have a game where he throws for 300 yards. Last year in his last start before the starter came back from injury, they won against Michigan State, and he threw winning touchdown pass with like 1:10 to go, and so he's shown signs of things, but it's been fumbles and interceptions. I know he has 10 interceptions in 5.5 starts or 5.5 games basically. He started 5 games and then split time with a freshman the other time. So that's kind of 2 interceptions per game. Plus, I think he has 4 or 5 fumbles on sacks. So shows signs and can make a lot of good throws, but has just been a turnover machine. I think he leads the Big Ten in turnovers. So, and that's without starting 4 games. So, that's the whole thing with him is the turnovers.
Going back to your so young theme, and this is just more from, I guess you could say, a Big Ten fan perspective, is that you referenced the turnovers and the youth. Is that also along the offensive line for the Fighting Illini? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't Illinois suffer through a number of sacks when they played Indiana last week? Yep.
Sacks have been an issue, and Illinois is now starting 4 freshmen on the offensive line, which I've never even heard of before. I can't. They have a junior and 4 freshmen, and I can't remember anything like that in any college football game I've ever seen. There was a time this year where USC had a bunch of injuries, and they were going to be starting 2 true freshmen on offensive line because a couple guys were injured, and it was just this huge, I can't believe they're 2 true freshmen starting offensive line. Well, here's Illinois, junior, freshman, and a freshman at tight end too. So, when they line up for a running play, it's a junior and 5 freshmen out there trying to block for that running play. So again, it's almost like they're not even thinking of this season. They're trying to build for the future and get these guys ready immediately. So they didn't redshirt them, and they sat the juniors and seniors and said, "Okay, freshmen, get out there. Let's start doing this." So it's crazy youth. The stat that gets thrown around is the youngest team in Illinois history was 1977. Gary Moeller, old Michigan Gary Moeller, was our head coach first. He lasted 3 years before getting fired. He won 6 games in 3 years. And Moeller's first year, he did this kind of same thing. Just turned to the freshman first class and said, "Okay, we're going to do this." And they had total number of starts from freshmen that year. They had 33 total starts. So, one guy starts 7 games, one guy starts 8 games, whatever, all totaled up to 33. As of this week, Illinois is at 76 total starts from true freshmen, and will finish in the 90s of, 90 total true starts. It's the most in the country. It's, so I've run out of adjectives to talk about how young this team is. And I've just settled on it's the youngest team in college football in the 2010s, because I did a ton of research on freshman starters and everything else, and I can't find anything like this where a team is this young.
Well, I'm going to turn it back over to Shannon, but I guess my last question, not because I understand the challenges of fielding such a young team the fact that that Illinois has 4 freshmen on the offensive line. Like I said, I can't remember the last time I've heard of a team doing such a thing. So I guess my question is there a diamond in the rough or a sleeper that, as a fan, that you're looking at this young team and it's discouraging to be on the losing end of so many games, but is there a player or players that you're kind of standing back and saying, I'm so glad that Illinois recruited this guy, that they're playing him now, that, no matter what, like in a couple of years, this guy, he could be all Big Ten, or, he could be an NFL draft choice. Is there a sleeper or a diamond in the rough that Ohio State fans should possibly be keeping an eye out for this coming Saturday when Ohio State and Illinois play?
Honestly, there are a lot of them. These freshmen are young and inexperienced and make a lot of mistakes, but a lot of them are really talented. I go to training camp every year, and I cover training camp, and I just stand on the sidelines and I'm watching practice. And I wrote at the time, like, it looks like they're running with a bunch of freshmen with the first string, and I agree with it, because when you watch these players, just pure talent-wise, some of these guys are light years ahead of the sophomores, juniors, and seniors. They're clearly better athletes, clearly bigger, faster, stronger, quicker, everything. So it makes sense that they're going with them. It's just they're so young. They're just so inexperienced, and they're surrounded by inexperienced guys. It's just, but I get it. A guy like Lewis Dorsey is a true freshman tight end. He had over 100 yards receiving against Indiana last week and a long touchdown. Really fast, really hard for a linebacker to stay with him. Maybe not the best blocker yet. He's a high school receiver that was converted to tight end, but really great hands. Has 2 kind of highlight one-handed catches this year. He's been really good. Ricky Smalling is a true freshman wide receiver. He's kind of the jump ball kind of guy. Like a lot of this offense is throw the jump ball to Smalling for the 25-yard gain, because he can go up and wrestle it away. There was a true freshman tailback, Mike Epstein, but he's injured now as a stress fracture in his foot, so he's out for the year. But yeah, there've been a lot. Some of these true freshman offensive linemen, defensive linemen. Bobby Roundtree has been really good. Bennett Williams, the safety, true freshman safety, he's been great. Nate Hobbs, true freshman cornerback, he's been great. Probably the best defensive back. So, there's a ton of guys who show a lot of potential, and if we're having this conversation in 2 years, I think you might be talking about an Illinois team that has some talent and is really getting somewhere. But this year is just young. I compare it to Purdue. Okay, Jeff Brom, he's playing 4 true freshmen this year. He went out and grabbed 5 JUCO guys and 6 graduate transfers. He's building it that way. Chris Ash has brought in 11 transfers at Rutgers and a couple JUCO guys here, and he's playing the upperclassmen. The Lovie rebuild and maybe even the Maryland rebuild have been, let's turn to the young guys immediately, and we're building for something, years down the road. So, that's the kind of thing you'll be seeing. I think it's going to get really, really ugly on Saturday. I mean, for us, not for you, but, you'll see flashes of talent, but you'll see a lot of guys who just don't know what they're doing yet.
You look at Ohio State, and us, when we talk about Ohio State and watch all the games and everything, we really have a hard time grasping what kind of team Ohio State is. You see that they just got, the Buckeye stomped out of them in Iowa City. Do you think that like the Illinois players are sitting there thinking to themselves, you know what, these guys can very well underestimate us also, and we might be able to sneak one by them?
I don't know if it's a sneak one by them, but there is that keep it close kind of thing. The spread's 41 or something crazy. So
yeah, it's insane.
It's going to be, it's going to be a drubbing, in all likelihood. But in 2006, Ron Zook's second year. Illinois went 2-10 in 2006. Ohio State, you're in the title game in 2006, right?
That was 2007.
Yeah, no, they were. He's right. In 2006,
it was
Ohio State was they went to Illinois. They lost. Ohio State beat Illinois 17 to 10.
Yeah,
but that was like the week before Ohio State played Michigan when they were ranked 1 and 2. So
yes, that's why I'm saying, like, and I think the spread in that one was like 30 something. Ohio State was supposed to just come in and roll, but maybe got caught peeking ahead toward Michigan, and Illinois was maybe showing some signs with that young team of getting a little better, and suddenly it's just 17-10 and probably a little more uncomfortable than Ohio State fans wanted it to be. So yeah, there's always the chance of that, but with this Illinois team, the offense is so young and really so injured. Like, there are 4 wide receivers that are out. There's 3 tailbacks that are out. They're basically down to the rest of the scholarship guys and a couple walk-ons at most of these positions. So with such a young and injured and inexperienced offense, I just can't picture how they move the ball. I can't really see it. On defense, you can maybe force some turnovers and surprise that way. And this defense isn't really that bad. It's okay. So maybe you get some crazy turnovers. And, Illinois leads the country in forced fumbles. That's the Lovie Smith thing. Put a helmet on the ball, force the ball out, punch it out, whatever you got to do. So, Illinois could do that and force a bunch of turnovers and have that crazy game where they're, +4 in turnovers or something. But when you get the ball, I don't know what to do. I don't know how you move the ball on this Ohio State. You would have to have Jeff George stop throwing interceptions, which he hasn't shown he can do. And you'd have to get the running game going, which just hasn't been there. So, you're talking one of the worst offenses in college football. So I just don't know. You can get lucky on defense and force a bunch of turnovers. It's hard to get lucky on offense when you're this young and bad, playing a what I think is a top 10 defense. So, it's going to be a struggle.
Yeah, I know weather's going to play a lot of factor into it. I believe it's supposed to be windy and rainy the whole day. So you're sitting there talking about for their offense. I seen the numbers, and it really is bad. It's one of the worst offenses, unfortunately. And when you look at defensively, it seems like they have a hard time stopping a run, and then they're going to be going up against this running attack for Ohio State. You don't want to sit there and say, hey, this is going to be an easy game for Ohio State, because teams always come in and they play their best against Ohio State because they have one of the biggest targets on their back. Because if you can sit there and say that you beat Ohio State, and that's something that, you could tell your grandkids and everything like that. So never say never.
Sure. That's right. And there's Illabuck. So there's, the turtle is out there to be taken. Illinois has won since 10 years ago in the, our Rose Bowl season. You won the Big Ten, but, went to the title game, which sent us to the Rose Bowl. But yeah, Illinois went in there 10 years ago and surprised a lot of people and came away with the victory. So,
yeah, we won't talk about
anything
that
can happen, but I just, if it was the other way around, that Illinois didn't have that great of a defense, but had a decent offense, and then there's rain and there's that sloppy game and a bunch of turnovers and fumbles and interceptions, you could see that game being, hey, the defense didn't play all that great, but hey, they forced a bunch of turnovers and the game turned around, the offense was able to score. When it's the other way around and the team doesn't have an offense, I don't know how you win that upset game, because you still have to score. You still have to move the ball. And I just, Illinois is, 122nd in the country in offensive yards and things like that. It's just, they've turned to the freshmen and they've said, okay, go get experienced kids. And they limit the playbook to maybe 20 plays that they know these kids can run yet. And, opposing defensive coordinators just kind of lick their chops, because it's pretty easy to shut down.
Illinois being over there in the West, a lot of people this year are saying, look, it's Wisconsin and then nobody else. We need to do a realignment of the league. I don't agree with that myself. I just think that the West needs to get better coaching. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with that. It's crazy when you look at recruiting the last 4 years because, even with Maryland recruiting like they are, like most years, the 5 best recruiting classes in the Big Ten are all in the East. There have been years where you see breakdowns of recruiting talent by division. Okay, it's Big Ten East, and then it's SEC West, and then it's, whatever, Pac-12 North and all this stuff. And some years, the best recruiting in the country is the Big Ten East, and the worst of all the divisions is the Big Ten West. So with Nebraska struggling and probably replacing their coach, and with, so much turnover and everything else, it's, I don't see a change for a while in that. I think Wisconsin dominates the West, and Nebraska tries to get back there, and, Northwestern, Iowa try and take their stab to maybe win the West. And I like it because as an Illinois fan, if I want to rebuild, I feel better about our chances of building something than maybe Indiana, because Indiana has to play you guys and Michigan State and Penn State and Michigan every year. And, we maybe play one of those 4 teams in the crossover game. So, I like being in the West. I like it's a little weaker. I say keep running with it. I like it way better than Leaders and Legends. I think it's a good alignment, and now it's just up to these West schools to make something of themselves.
Yeah, I agree. My biggest thing is if you go and change it now just because, oh, look, we've got 4 stacked teams in the East and 1 team over here in the West, then all of a sudden you do a realignment, in a couple of years if everything changes and you have, 5 in a 1 right. And, then you're going to keep re-changing. You can't do it. I
agree. And as we're trying to rebuild, I agree doubly so because I think it's a lot easier to rebuild when you're playing Minnesota, Purdue, and Northwestern than it is if you were playing, Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan.
Yeah, I agree. Chip, did you have anything else?
No, only I wish the best of luck to Lovie Smith. I met Coach Smith 20 years ago when I was a volunteer recruiting assistant, when Coach Smith was an assistant coach coaching the defensive backfield for Ohio State in 1995. So he's a tremendous individual. I wish him the best of luck. Obviously not too good of luck against Ohio State this coming Saturday. And like Shannon said, I hope the Illinois administration gives him the benefit of the doubt and that patience that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, I really think they're bought into it. And I think they're even behind, conversations of saying, okay, Lovie saying, I don't have much on this roster, so this year's going to be ugly, and I'm going to start the freshmen, and we're going to build from the ground up. And I think the administration is in on that, and it's just, it's going to be a while, but the plan is to, have a solid foundation once you start building the structure. So yeah, same for me. Best of luck to you guys. You probably don't need much of it. It's going to get ugly, but, hopefully in a couple of years, we'll be talking about a competitive game.
Yeah, I definitely agree also. I just hope everybody stays healthy on both teams and they both finish out the season strong. I know I'm looking over here at the recruiting, and it looks like right now with all the commits that Illinois has, you guys are ranked 14th in the Big Ten. I mean, how do you think that he can improve on that?
Yeah, I mean, he's got the one solid recruit, a big 4-star kid out of Texas. It's, if you go by star rating, probably not going to be the worst class in the Big Ten. Like, Purdue has like 22 recruits, but average rating is much worse. He's going to have to close strong. It's not going to be as good as last year's class. But all I can say is that they have looked at things in a different way. A lot of these kids that are starting weren't highly ranked recruits. Bennett Williams, Nate Hobbs, Lewis Dorsey. None of these kids were even mid 3 stars. And they're all really good and are going to be on, freshman all Big Ten teams and things like that, and maybe even freshman All-American. So I think he's got a good scouting department. I think he's found some gems. You just got to keep rolling with it, keep plugging it in the system, and keep doing the same thing. And, once the win starts coming, hopefully the recruiting improves. Well,
as Mark D'Antonio shows, you don't have to constantly get any kind of classes full of 4 and 5 stars. And as Jim Harbaugh has shown, having classes with 4 and 5 stars, it's not always a winner. So it's definitely different ways and different approaches. And it'd be nice to see Illinois contending for the Big Ten West and making the Big Ten itself just a whole lot stronger. And I'm just get rid of this whole SEC is better than everybody else narrative, which is just completely false.
I agree with it. And it's funny, you mentioned Harbaugh. A few days after Lovie was hired, I more or less called my shot. So this is March of 2016. And in my Twitter bio, I added the date October 12th, 2019. And that's when Michigan comes to town in Champaign. And I basically said, okay, that's the date. This is going to take a while. Illinois had the Beckman scandal. They lost, they had 11 decommitments in that class. There was an interim coach who was extended for 2 years. The bottom dropped out of recruiting. There were a bunch of transfers. Illinois is down to 76 scholarship players this year. They maxed out with the last class. It's more or less a team on probation. But I said, okay, this is it. 4 years from now, in 2019, or 3 years from now, from March of 2016, that's when Illinois will turn the corner. And so when Harbaugh comes to town in 2019, and Illinois has had this kind of history with games with Michigan that we don't really need to go into, but that's the moment I have focused on. And we are less than 2 years away now, and I'm still sticking to it. But it's going to be rough. It's going to be young. It's going to be ragged. But October 12th, 2019 is when Illinois will begin to turn the corner.
Well, hopefully Ohio State and Michigan State don't run him off to the NFL since he's struggling to figure out how to beat them.
Well, I hope you stick around until 2019. So
there you go. All right, Robert, we want to thank you for joining us, and everybody go check out his work at IlliniBoard.com and follow him on Twitter at @ALionI.
All right, appreciate it, guys. Thanks.
Thanks for being on.
One is a riverboat gambler using his gut to make his picks. The other is cool, calculating, and scares Vegas. This is the Silver Bullets game prediction segment. Who are you going to ride with? All right, now it's time for the Silver Bullets Pick'em segment, where I have a 6-game lead over Chip, which is kind of strange to even hear myself say it for some reason. All right, we're just going to do the Big Ten games this week because really for the top 25 games, there's not really any kind of matchups, especially when you look at the SEC and they're pretty much all scheduled against, FCS teams and everything, getting ready for their big rivalry games. Sure,
That's
Ohio State's, I know. Sure, I mean, a lot of people are like, well, Ohio State's got Illinois. You didn't know Illinois wasn't going to be that good. But at the same time, it's a Big Ten team. It's a Power 5 opponent. And it just, next year, or I think the year after, I think it's like 2019 maybe, we have to play Penn State before Michigan. So, yeah, the last 2 years we had to play Michigan State before Michigan. Cut me a break. speaking of Michigan, we're going to lead it off with Michigan going to number 8 Wisconsin. It's a 12 o'clock game on Fox. This is going to be a pretty interesting matchup here. What do you got?
Well, I'm going to just kind of speculate that from what I've seen as we're recording this, that the weather forecast for Ohio, for what I understand, is the strong possibility of rain. So I have no idea what the weather's supposed to be like up in Madison, but if it's rainy and very difficult to throw the ball effectively, play after play, I'm going to go with Wisconsin here. I think it's, to borrow one of Coach Meyer's phrases, I think, this is going to be, kind of a slugfest between both teams that, Michigan is they're getting better at throwing the ball, but they're not there yet. And I think Wisconsin would prefer to run the ball, even though Hornibrook is the better passer of the two, but I'm going to go with Wisconsin here.
Yeah, Wisconsin's an 8.5 favorite, but Wisconsin's got the number 1 defense in the country. Michigan's got the number 3 defense in the country. I think Higdon might be banged up. I'm not sure. So that's going to kind of put a, little issue into the Wolverines' game plan if he's not going to be full go or anything like that for the game. But I also look at the simple fact that, as much as Michigan fans don't want to hear this, they have not won on the road against a ranked opponent since 2006, I believe. So they're going up against, I didn't look at the rankings beforehand, before we taped this, so that's my fault for saying number 8 Wisconsin. I didn't see what they were, though they got moved up to. But still, it's a ranked team. Whatever. They also haven't beat a winning team yet this year. So maybe Wisconsin did make it into, matter of fact, let me pull it up while we're sitting here talking. Did you get to catch any of it yet?
I have not.
Okay, so forgive me while I'm typing in the background here of the show. So
I got it.
It is number 5 Wisconsin. Okay. And, look who jumped up to number 19 after last week not being ranked. That's the AP. I'm sorry.
Okay, so Wisconsin is number 5. They're where they should be.
So they are number 5 in the playoffs also.
Correct.
Now, how come I don't have the... Oh, I have to love it. For some reason, I'm going to their site and they don't have it up.
All right, well, let's get back to our pick'em then.
Is Michigan ranked?
Number 24.
Oh, they did make it in there. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So, yeah, we're both going with the Badgers here on this one. All right, Minnesota at number 25, Northwestern. Like I said, I don't have the up-to-date rankings in front of me right now, so I apologize.
All right, well, Northwestern is
23.
Ranked 23rd.
Yeah, I see it now. It's a 12 p.m. game on BTN. Who's you going to go with on that one?
I'll go with Northwestern here. I know Minnesota beat Nebraska. That's, for those of you that are, Shannon referred to, he's 6 games ahead. That was one of those where I thought Nebraska was going to play better than they did against Minnesota last week. But I think that's all going to turn around on the Golden Gophers this weekend. I'm going with Northwestern here.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I'm gonna go with the Wildcats on this one also. Even though that their rushing game is kind of not very good this year, even though they have Jeff Jackson or whatever. No, I forget what his name is, but all right. Rutgers at Indiana. This one's interesting here. 12 p.m. on BTN. Rutgers doesn't have a Big Ten win, and Indiana's looking for their first Big Ten win, I do believe.
Actually, that changed last week.
Oh, did they win?
Both Rutgers has a Big Ten win. When they beat Purdue earlier, and they actually had a couple.
Yeah, they have 2. They
Indiana,
have Illinois
right,
and
Indiana Indiana beat Illinois to give them their first Big Ten win of the season.
All right.
So anyway, I'm going to go with Indiana, not for any great reason except for the fact that I think the fact that the game's at Indiana, that's enough for me, but not with any strong sense of conviction on that part.
Yeah, the spread on that one's at 11 right now for Indiana. I was kind of leaning towards Rutgers, but being at Indiana and it's just Rutgers offense. I mean, granted, Indiana doesn't have a great defense, but still, I'm going to go with the Hoosiers also. All right, we have Illinois at number 8, Ohio State, 3:30 p.m. on ABC.
All right, I don't mean to sound harsh. Shannon, I know I'm a little bit older than you, but I do recall.
Not that much older.
In the 1980s, you have to admit, in the latter 1980s, early 1990s, Illinois was almost as much of a thorn in the side of John Cooper as Michigan was back in the day. So I remember Illinois constantly coming in. Eddie George could, for those of you that forget, how his career started out. But those days are so far in the distant past. It's kind of difficult to, before somebody starts to throw the 2007 loss to Illinois. Illinois is they're a very bad team. And the fact that Ohio State's favored by about 41 points should give you an idea as to when I say a very bad team. So I'm going Ohio State 63, Illinois 7.
Yeah, I'm going to go 56-3. Just because it's going to be raining. All right, we got Purdue at number 20, Iowa, 3:30 p.m. on BTN.
Tough one to call, just because we're 2 weeks removed from Iowa just completely dominating Ohio State, and then last week being thrashed by Wisconsin. So the fact that it's at Iowa, I'm going to give it to the Hawkeyes, but I don't feel really strong on this one. I'm going to go with Iowa.
I have to agree. They're 9-point favorites, and Purdue lost their starting quarterback, so I definitely have to go with Iowa on this one. Maryland at number 12, Sparty. It's a 4 p.m. game on Fox.
I'm going Sparty big here. I think they bounce back with a lot more pride after being so thoroughly routed by Ohio State last week. I'm going with Michigan State.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what their mental status is after that game. Sparty should win this one easily, handedly, and for some reason there's no spread on it, so I don't even know if it's even a toss-up or what. I found that weird that I couldn't find anything on that one.
I see that the spread is Michigan State's favored by 16.5.
Nebraska at number 14, Penn State, 4 p.m. on FS1.
I think Penn State rolls big, and the Cornhusker faithful can only hope that those rumors of a overture to Scott Frost are true. I think it's going to be painful to watch Nebraska conclude their season, especially on the road at Penn State. I think on somewhat national television on FS1. So Penn State big. I believe they're favored by 26.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of interesting to hear. I mean, I thought we were seeing something about possible Scott Frost to Florida, but now seeing that they vetted allegedly Chip Kelly, hoping that he's going to be able to come to Florida. So Nebraska's going to be needing a new coach at the end of the season. There's no way around it. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of the Silver Bullets podcast on the Ozone Radio Network. We want to thank Robert from IllinoisBoard.com for joining us. You can follow him on Twitter at ALionEye. That's ALIONEYE. And you can check out his work, like I said, on IllinoisBoard.com. One day I will learn how to speak when I'm looking at the paper. Chip, you want to go ahead and give the folks where your information and stuff?
Yeah, I can be found on Twitter at Chip Minnich, Minnich. As Shannon said earlier, I'm a contributor to Athlon Sports as well as a contributor to the Hayes and Cannon section on the ozone.net. Feel free to reach out with comments, questions about anything I've written, about the podcast, anything like that at all, because we always enjoy interacting with our fans of the podcast as well as the things that we contribute to the websites.
Definitely. You can follow me on Twitter at Shannon CFB. You could follow the show on Twitter at SILVR Bullets POD. You could like us on Facebook, Silver Bullets Podcast. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. You could subscribe to us on the Apple Podcast, because I guess it's no longer called the iTunes Podcast or whatever. iTunes or whatever. I guess it's a big cluster and everything. So you can listen to us on TuneIn. You can listen to us on SoundCloud, Spreaker, YouTube. If we're not anywhere, if we're not somewhere, just let us know, and we'll definitely get ourselves on there. Stitcher. I mentioned earlier that we have a contest we're going to do, Chip. No, we kind of talked about this on Twitter, on our DMs or whatever, before the show. You ready to hear what our contest is going to be?
Good. Lay it on them.
No, all right. In honor of Saturday being the last game for JT Barrett, the three-time champion, the three-time captain, the only three-time captain at Ohio State, along with other seniors like Billy Price, Jalen Holmes, Chris Worley. We're just scratching the surface on names. I can sit here and I think there's like 18 names or something like that, at least just for seniors. As a tribute to these players, we want to offer fans to send us at silverbulletspodcast@gmail.com voice messages. Just do a little voice recording on your smartphone and email it to us, attach it or whatever. Or even on Facebook, if you're liking our Facebook page, you can send it to the message or, send it as a DM on Twitter or however you're going to do it. You could also call our number at here for the Silver Bullets podcast, which is area code 502-203-5705. Leave a voicemail. Leave the best. Come up with something different. Come up with something original. What we want to do is we want to take all of these and put it together and have a tribute show for the seniors. A thank you. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to pick one lucky person is going to get, you remember when we had Tony on our show last year, I think it was, or 2 years ago, and him and John Prentice wrote the book, the Trilogy?
Yes.
We are going to give away a copy of the Trilogy. We are going to have I don't know what you want to call this, but it's breast cancer thing that we gave out at the stadium with Ohio State on it and everything. It's like a little head scarf. You could wear it covering your face, your ears, and, your head or whatnot. Have one of those. We have a scarlet and a gray rally towel from the Penn State game, so you're going to have a set. And you're also going to be 2 free tickets for the Illinois game this coming Saturday. It's in section 25AA, row 3, seats 19 and 20. That's a pretty good package, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So give us a call. Send us in your voice messages. Send us in your voice recordings. Have fun with it. Be original. And good luck. And we'll definitely be giving this stuff out. I'm not going to send the tickets out to anybody. What you're going to have to do is when we pick out the winner, we'll pick out the winner, probably say 8, 9 o'clock on 8 or 9 p.m. on Friday. And what you'll do is, in order to pick it up, we'll contact the winner, and the winner will, you have to be probably following us on Twitter or whatever. We'll figure out a way to get a hold of you. send your information or whatever when you do the send in your stuff. But you'll come up to the North Rotunda. I'll be inside the booth there, and I will have your tickets and all this other stuff and give it to you, and you can enjoy the game and everything. So with that being said, good luck and go Bucks.
Go Bucks.